Friday. We put this thing together within 24 hours, and we got a lot of support from our men and women in the fire and EMS community here in Putnam and in northern Westchester. We are at the Brewster Volunteer Fire Department's main station in the village of Brewster. I want to thank Jerry Schremick, who is a fire commissioner, for helping us get this space and putting this together very quick. I'm going to be introducing our Putnam County Bureau of Emergency Services Commissioner in a few minutes to say a few words and help acknowledge the various members of the fire and emergency medical services who are here this afternoon. And he's also going to say a few words about the bill that we're here to gather support for. We're here to talk about and support legislation that is introduced by my colleague from upstate New York, Billy Jones. The Assembly Bill number is A.534. This is legislation I've been a co-sponsor of for several years since I first joined the New York State Assembly, but actually it's been in Albany for over a decade. This is the closest we've ever gotten to it actually almost becoming law. It's already passed the state Senate earlier this year for the second time, and earlier this past week, in the month of May, it actually got out of the first committee in the Assembly, first time ever. Unanimous, strong bipartisan support. What the legislation does, would it allow volunteer fire departments that provide ambulance services to bill and collect fees for ambulance rides. Now, this would be primarily through insurance companies, something that, quite frankly, volunteer ambulance corps have been able to do for many, many years in this state. There's been a disparity in how fire departments can collect revenue compared to volunteer ambulance corps. The system as it's designed right now in New York actually encourages some departments to split and create a whole second ambulance corps just so they can bill for those services, collect revenue from the insurance companies, which, by the way, people are already paying for, so they can get that added revenue and not have to rely so much on property taxes. That revenue is essential for equipment, for training, and I think we've seen through this past year in the pandemic, talking about first responders, frontline heroes, those in EMS were extremely stressed. We talk about PPE, talk about the uncertainties when they went to a 911 call, having to bring that stress back into their home life when we didn't know a lot about this virus. So those are all important expenses that revenue is important for. And again, for taxpayers, this is extremely important because it allows them to not rely so much on property taxes. In the 94th Assembly District, we have a lot of different fire departments that are here with us, but there are 4 that are directly affected by the current law and would benefit from this important change. That's the Brewster Fire Department, where we are here today, that provides ambulance services, the Mahopac Falls Volunteer Fire Department, the Mahopac Fire Department, or Mahopac, please don't shoot me, anybody, and the Somers Volunteer Fire Department. Each of these fire departments provide ambulance services. So by making this needed change in our state's law, they'll be able to bring in this very important revenue. But right now, I want to just again say that for all of these men and women behind me that have been doing this job selflessly because they care about our community, they don't ask who you are, where you come from when you call 911, they're there to help. They need resources and support. This bill will do that, but it needs to pass. I'm in the Ways and Means Committee. It was referred to Ways and Means Committee from the last committee. Next week is the last week of legislative session, folks. June 10th is the last day scheduled for the Assembly to be able to vote on this bill or any other. So we need to keep the pressure on, strike while the iron is hot, get Albany to pass this bill so we can support our first responders, especially our men and women in the fire departments. With that, I'm going to introduce my friend, someone I actually know way before I was in politics. When I volunteered in the fire department over in Kent, they're not even in my assembly district, but the Kent Fire District, we have representatives from them here as well because they provide ambulance services in this county. 𝐂𝐞𝐿, the Commissioner for the Bureau of Emergency Services of Putnam County, and also here representing the County Executive, Mary Ellen Odell. Kenny, thank you for being here, and if you wouldn't mind, say a few words and help acknowledge the folks who are in attendance.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Assemblyman Byrne. All the folks standing behind me, it's a great honor that on such short notice we were able to pull this off. As Kevin said, June 10th is our final, and I'm grateful that we were able to get this pulled together this afternoon. As Kevin said, when people call 911, whether you're a volunteer or paid, it doesn't really matter. People want service, you know, and they need to be taken to the hospital. Just to give you some quick stats, last year, countywide EMS, we did 7,779 calls of service. 1,734 of those calls were with the Brewster Fire Department. 865 was Mahopac Fire Department. 587 was the Mahopac Falls Fire Department. So these folks, the volunteers, are out there day and night running these calls. You know, we're not asking for a cent. This is a bill that's long overdue, way long overdue. It's probably like half my fire service. We've been talking about allowing fire departments to bill for EMS, EMS runs. Again, the folks behind me, I'm going to introduce some of our friends from the fire service. No particular order. 𝐁𝐲𝐫𝐞 from Kent. He's also a battalion for Putnam County, Battalion 15. Mike McCluskey, past president of the Putnam County EMS Council. He's also the current president for Fire and Ambulance for Pub Valley. Matt Chiara, lieutenant for Brewster Fire. Bill Montero, firefighter Brewster. Fred Bamba, firefighter Brewster. Steve Gasparini, chief of Kent. Edward Scott, ex-chief of Mahopac Falls, Mahopac FD, also one of our 911 dispatchers at Putnam. Jim Stasiak, the chief of Mahopac. Mike Hangel, the chair and board of directors of Carmel Volunteer Fire Department. Angela Outhouse, the first VP of Westchester County Volunteer Fire Association. Donnie Farrell, the FASNY director. Mike Karski, legislator chair of FASNY. Robert Outhouse, first vice president of Hudson Valley. Michael Miller, chief of Brewster Volunteer Fire Department. Michael Krimmaker, director of FASNY. This guy needs no introductions. Chan Rivera, past director of FASNY. Steve Kaufman, commissioner of Brewster Fire Department, Fire District. John Fitzgerald, commissioner of Somers Fire District. John Mackey, chief of Somers. Edward Zohr, commissioner of Somers. Casey Quake, EMS director of Putnam County. John O'Connor, Southeast Councilman, also emergency manager for Putnam County. Robert Lipton, deputy commissioner of emergency services. Chris Tobin, the assistant chief of North Highlands. Jim Krogan, Mahopac and Putnam County Volunteer Firemen's Association. Eric Gross, Putnam County Car 10. Kevin McConville, former MTA police chief. Jerry Schrammick, commissioner of Brewster Southeast Joint Fire District. And Carl Luciano, our friend of Southeast. We miss anybody. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you on such short notice coming out. These are the folks that are out night and day, running our fire and EMS calls, get you to the hospital safely. It is time that we pass this bill. Again, long overdue. Many commissioners stood before me trying to get this done. We haven't been able to done, but I have faith in Kevin. This is the closest we've ever come to getting this bill finally, not a dream, but actually a reality. Correct?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. So with that, for some more remarks, I'm going to introduce the Firemen's Association of the State of New York's legislative chairman, Mike Keriche. Before I do that, Kenny talked about how close we are, and he's 100% right. We're trying to strike while the iron's hot. I don't know if I mentioned it. Some departments have actually been encouraged to split and create ambulance corps so they can soft bill. I represent Yorktown. Mohegan Lake was one of those departments years back. So we want to make sure we get those sources here. But I want to hear from everyone behind me. What are we going to do in Albany next week? We're going to pass the bill, right? Yeah. Pass the bill! Pass the bill! Pass the bill! Pass the bill! All right, thank you. Mike Keriche.
Thank you, Senator.
You got it.
Good afternoon. I'd like to share a few comments about the bill itself. There was a study done, and we are missing about $100 million opportunity statewide in revenue for fire departments that can't recover costs. Our fire departments are not looking to make a profit on this. They want to be able to be on a level playing field. Statewide, the study revealed that there's 297,000 calls that weren't billed for. We're the only state in the union that doesn't allow volunteer fire departments to bill for ambulance services. And lastly, the law that prohibits this is antiquated and it needs to change. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. I know some of the directors, Kane did a great job running through the list of names. Some of them traveled as far as Nassau County to be here to show support for this legislation, and we are grateful for your attendance. Next, I'm going to introduce a very big friend of the fire service, the first vice president of the Hudson Valley Volunteer Firemen's Association, Bob Outhouse, coming up here from Westchester County. Bob?
Thank you, Assemblyman. This is a most important bill for the fire service, and as you heard FASNY's legislative chairman say, we're the only state in the country that doesn't allow our volunteer fire service to bill for services. We need this bill. This bill has been in Albany a long time. As a representative of the Hudson Valley Volunteer Firemen's Service, which encompasses 16 counties throughout the valley, we've endorsed this bill every time to bring to FASNY to push this bill. This bill is needed. It's time to pass the bill. I wish the Assembly would go ahead and get this out of committee and bring it to the floor and let's vote on it. This is a no-brainer for the fire service. Thank you, Assemblyman Byrne, for inviting me here today. I wish you luck, and please, the volunteer fire service, get on the phone, get to your Assembly people all around the state, and get them to vote on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Again, we got 4 fire departments within the Assembly District that would directly benefit from this bill. The Brewster Volunteer Fire Department, Mahopac Falls, and the Somers Fire Department. So I'm going to ask, I know we have fire chiefs from a lot of them, if any of our fire chiefs would like to say a few words, you're welcome, no pressure. Any of the fire commissioners, they're the ones that usually deal with a lot of the budget. So I know the fire districts across the state are very much supportive of this bill. It would be very helpful to them to bring in this new revenue without having to further increase property taxes if they can help it. Would anybody else like to say a few words? All right. Yes? No? Okay, with that, again, I'll say thank you. A lot of the people behind me are part of an advisory committee we formed when I first got elected into the Assembly for fire and EMS. I want to thank them for their advocacy, their guidance, and their counsel. I myself was a member of the Volunteer Fire Service for about 10 years in Kent, where I also volunteered as an EMT. So I'm grateful to these people behind me for all the work that they do. And let's get to Albany and let's pass this bill. If there's any questions, pass the bill. Pass the bill. Any questions from the press? Yes, Eric.
Yes, Kevin. Once Ways and Means gets it out of committee next week, when will it be?
So first it needs to go to Ways and Means, which has been referred to. It needs to get on the agenda. So the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, Helene Weinstein, we're asking her, put it on the agenda for a vote. Put it on the agenda, and then the speaker can get it to the floor for a full vote of the legislature in the Assembly. We're at a point where we're not asking the Senate for help. They did their job. They got it passed. And again, when it got out of local governments, for the first time, it actually received a vote, was put on the agenda. It was unanimous. It was unanimous. You know, I think it's refreshing to see some bipartisanship in Albany and just in government these days. Here's a perfect example where it really would help improve lives, public health, and safety.
So if all goes well before the end of the year?
If they get it on the agenda and the speaker allows a vote next week and the governor signs it into law, it's when the effective date of the bill, so they could plan for it for next year. But the first step is getting it on that committee agenda. Local governments, I just don't happen to be a member of that committee, but I am a member of Ways and Means. I'm the only Assembly member on the Ways and Means Committee from Putnam County, and I think I'm one of only 2 Ways and Means Committee members from Westchester. So we're asking for all my committee members to help us get it on the agenda and calling for a vote on the floor. Yes, sir.
What has been the rationale for not doing it, or for having this law in the first place, this regulation in place for these years?
Well, I would say I disagree with the opponents' rationale. Opponents have traditionally been some advocates for the paid ambulance services, because I think there's some fear that volunteers are going to compete and take over some of their business. What I would say is they're already doing it. These people behind me that are going on ambulance runs, they're already doing it. All right, we're not interested in taking away somebody else's job. They're just looking to get revenue to help support a job, a role they're already doing.
About how many, is it known about how many departments have an ambulance service throughout the state?
I'm not sure if FASNY has it.
90, I believe, about the number.
So close to 490. That was, I think, that was, that number was used, I believe, in that study, which was referenced to say that this could bring in potentially $100 million to these fire departments across the state of New York. And that they use that based on call volume and those departments providing ambulance services.
So roughly 490 have an ambulance service with fire.
Correct. Any other questions? All right, thank you again for coming out on your Friday afternoon. I appreciate it. And let's pass this bill.
Pass the bill!
No, it's filming when it's red. You know it's filming, but if there's a streaming connection that's disrupted, which is happening, it may not have been triggered. Is it? On Facebook. Now it's like it's not.
Go.